Have you ever doubted yourself just when you were about to take a big step? This story begins with Maya, a young artist living in a city pulsing with life, ambition, and endless possibilities. Maya's world was a kaleidoscope of colors and emotions, captured in every brushstroke she laid on canvas. Her dream was as vivid as her paintings, to showcase her work in one of the most prestigious galleries the city had to offer. But beneath that vibrant exterior hid a silent struggle, an overwhelming self-doubt that often held her back. Maya's apartment was a small studio filled with canvases leaning against every wall, paint tubes scattered like fallen soldiers in battle, and brushes resting in jars, waiting for their next command. She was talented, no doubt. Those who had seen her work spoke of an innate ability to capture raw emotion, a natural storyteller through color and form. Yet, when it came to sharing her art with the world, Maya's confidence wavered like a flickering candle in the night. She feared rejection, failure, and the harsh judgment that seemed to lurk behind every gallery door. The city itself was a constant reminder of opportunity and competition. Crowded streets echoed with footsteps of hundreds chasing their dreams, each hoping to be seen and heard. The towering skyscrapers and neon signs painted a backdrop of potential, but also pressure. Maya knew others who had already taken the leap, artists whose names were whispered in art circles, whose works hung in well-lit halls, admired and sold. She wanted that too, desperately. But every time she prepared to submit her portfolio, the familiar voice of doubt crept in, whispering, "Are you good enough? What if they don't like your work? Maybe you should wait until you're better." Her friends believed in her. They were her closest companions, a support system that cheered her on from the sidelines. They knew the depth of her talent and the heart she poured into every creation. Yet, even their encouragement sometimes felt distant when Maya was alone with her thoughts. "You have to believe in yourself," her best friend Layla would say, eyes shining with conviction. "Your art deserves to be seen." But belief was easier said than felt, especially when fear tangled itself around every brushstroke. Each day, Maya wrestled with her emotions. Mornings began with hope, as she dipped her brush into fresh paint and imagined her pieces hanging on gallery walls. But as the sun arced across the sky, that hope often dimmed, replaced by a creeping hesitation. She found herself pausing mid-stroke, questioning every color choice, every line, convinced that what she was creating wasn't worthy. The blank spaces on her canvases sometimes seemed less intimidating than the blank spaces in her confidence. Maya's studio was more than a workspace, it was a battleground of her mind. The walls bore witness to her internal conflict, canvases half-finished, sketches scribbled with doubt, notes to herself urging courage. She often sat in the corner, brush in hand, staring at a canvas as if it held the answers she sought. The city outside buzzed with life, but inside, time slowed, trapped in a cycle of anticipation and fear. Her dream of that gallery submission felt both tantalizingly close and impossibly far. She was aware that the first step was the hardest, the moment she would send her work out, expose her soul to strangers' eyes, and risk everything. The thought made her heart race and her hands tremble. Sometimes, she would prepare her portfolio meticulously, only to delete the email or hide the application form, telling herself, "Tomorrow will be better." Yet, Maya's story was not just about doubt, it was about the battle between self-doubt and self-belief, a struggle that millions face in their own ways. Her journey was set against the backdrop of a bustling city filled with other dreamers, some triumphant, others faltering, all searching for their moment. Her friends who stood by her were beacons of hope, reminding her that talent alone wasn't enough without courage. In this city of endless possibilities, Maya's art was waiting to be seen, but first, she had to find the strength to believe in herself. The challenge ahead was not just about painting or submission, it was about confronting the invisible barriers she had built within, the fears that silenced her voice just when she was ready to speak. Maya's story is a mirror held up to anyone who has ever hesitated, who has felt the weight of doubt when facing a dream. It is a reminder that the battle inside is as critical as the battle outside, and that every great journey begins with the courage to take the first step, even if the path is clouded by uncertainty. As Maya sat in her studio one evening, the fading light casting long shadows across her unfinished canvases, she whispered to herself, "I want to believe. I want to try." And in that quiet moment, a seed was planted, a seed of hope that would soon be challenged by the very doubts she wished to overcome. Maya's struggle with self-doubt continued to weigh heavily on her, but one afternoon brought a new presence into her life, a mentor named Elias, an experienced artist known not only for his striking works but for his wisdom in guiding others through the creative process. Elias had a calm demeanor and eyes that seemed to look beyond the surface, right into the heart of one's fears and hopes. When Elias visited Maya's studio, he noticed the scattered canvases and the uncertainty that hung in the air like a thick fog. After a brief tour of her work, he settled beside her and shared a story, one that would come to shape Maya's understanding of her own art and, more importantly, herself. There once were two paintings, Elias began, voice steady and gentle. One was filled with hesitation. The artist kept stopping, doubting each stroke, afraid to commit. The colors were muted, the lines uncertain, and the painting never quite came alive. The other painting was bold, confident. The artist embraced each brushstroke, even the imperfect ones, trusting that the energy behind the work would bring it to life. That painting, though flawed, spoke to people's hearts. Maya listened intently, the story resonating deep within her. Elias explained how the energy behind every brushstroke, every choice an artist makes, influences the final masterpiece. The hesitation, the fear, the doubt, they don't just affect the mind, they seep into the canvas, dulling the vibrancy and emotion. Conversely, confidence, self-belief, and the willingness to embrace imperfection breathe life into art, making it captivating and genuine. Inspired, Maya decided to confront her fears in a way she hadn't before. She resolved to paint two canvases, one that reflected her self-doubt, filled with the hesitation that had plagued her, and another that she would attempt with as much confidence as she could muster, even if it felt forced or uncomfortable. She began the first painting, her brush trembling as she laid down the initial colors. The strokes were cautious, tentative, as if she were afraid to make a mistake. The hues were subdued, the composition unfinished, lacking the passion that usually colored her work. It was a reflection of her inner turmoil, beautiful ideas trapped by fear. The second painting sat on the opposite side of the studio, a blank challenge waiting to be met. Maya approached it with a mixture of resolve and anxiety. Each brushstroke was an act of defiance against the voice inside her that whispered, "You're not ready. You're not good enough." She pushed herself to finish the piece, though uncertainty lingered like a shadow behind her eyes. Days passed as Maya juggled between these two creations, pouring her emotions onto the canvases. But the self-doubt remained a stubborn opponent. When Elias returned to see her progress, he examined both paintings carefully. The hesitant painting, with its muted tones and fragmented lines, seemed to echo Maya's fears. The confident painting, though imperfect, radiated energy and promise. Elias's critique was honest but encouraging. The hesitant painting shows where you've been, a place of fear and uncertainty. But it's the confident one I want you to focus on. It's not about perfection, it's about trust. Trust in your process, your voice, and the imperfections that make your work unique. You must confront your fears directly, not hide behind them. Maya felt a tremor of realization. The mentor's words were a challenge, a call to face the very doubts that had held her captive. She understood that to move forward, she needed to embrace the messy, imperfect journey of creation rather than waiting for some elusive state of readiness. Yet, despite this insight, the paralysis of doubt still gripped her at times. The thought of submitting her portfolio was daunting, the fear of rejection looming large. But the act of painting those two canvases had begun to chip away at the walls she had built around her confidence. Elias's story and his critique became a turning point, a moment where Maya confronted the duality within herself, the hesitant artist and the confident creator. The two paintings symbolized this struggle, a tangible manifestation of the battle between self-doubt and self-belief. In her quiet moments, Maya reflected on the mentor's words. She knew that finishing the confident painting was more than just completing a canvas, it was about committing to a new mindset. It was about accepting that fear would accompany her, but it didn't have to control her. The city outside continued its relentless pace, but inside Maya's studio, a subtle transformation was underway. The hesitant painting remained as a reminder of where she had been, while the confident painting stood as a beacon of where she could go. The mentor's challenge echoed in her mind. Confront your fears directly. As the sun set one evening, casting an amber glow over her work, Maya picked up her brush once more. This time, the strokes were bolder, infused with a quiet determination. Each mark was a small victory over hesitation, a step toward trusting herself and her art. Maya's journey was far from over, but the turning point had arrived. The struggle between doubt and belief was ongoing, but she was beginning to understand that the energy she put into her work mattered just as much as the skill. The canvas was no longer just a surface to fill, it was a mirror reflecting her inner world. And so, with Elias's story in her heart and the two paintings as silent witnesses, Maya prepared to face the next challenge, submitting her work to the gallery. The battle with self-doubt was real, but now she carried a new weapon, the courage to confront it head-on. Days after Elias's visit, Maya found herself alone in her studio, the confident painting standing before her like a silent challenge. The mentor's words echoed in her mind, embrace imperfection. Trust yourself to grow. It wasn't an easy lesson to grasp, but it was one she was determined to live by. Maya had spent years waiting for the perfect moment, the flawless piece to submit, the ideal version of herself. But now, with the confident painting partially complete and her fears no longer hiding in the shadows but facing her directly, she realized that perfection was an illusion. The true masterpiece was the courage to begin, to keep going despite uncertainty. She took a deep breath, dipped her brush into the paint, and began to work on the confident canvas. Each stroke was deliberate, yet free, as if she was learning to dance with her doubts rather than battling them. She allowed imperfections to remain, rough edges, uneven textures, colors bleeding beyond their borders. In those flaws, she found authenticity. Maya's days became filled with this new rhythm, painting not to impress or to meet some impossible standard, but to express, to explore, and to trust in the process. The self-doubt didn't vanish overnight, but its grip loosened. She learned to acknowledge her fears without letting them dictate her actions. Encouraged by this shift, Maya finally gathered the courage to prepare her gallery submission. She compiled her portfolio with the confident painting as its centerpiece, a testament to her journey. The act of sending her work into the world was daunting, but each click of the mouse was a declaration, I believe in my art. I believe in myself. Weeks passed, and then the day came when Maya received the news, her work had been accepted. The gallery wanted to showcase her painting. It was more than a professional milestone, it was a validation of the hard-fought battle within herself. At the opening night, as Maya stood among visitors admiring her work, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The painting was no longer just a canvas filled with colors, it was a symbol of transformation. She had faced her self-doubt and, through courage and persistence, turned it into confidence. Maya's journey teaches us that overcoming self-doubt is not about eliminating fear but about embracing it and moving forward anyway. It requires courage, action, and the willingness to accept imperfection as part of growth. Only by believing in ourselves can we change our mindset and create the lives we envision. If you find yourself held back by doubt, remember Maya's story. Take that first step, face your fears, and trust the process. Your masterpiece awaits.